aching headache, as if from a blow, subsided, hiding in the dark corners of the returning consciousness. All around, darkness stretched in endless space, absolute and impenetrable, so much so that it was impossible to even see her own hand right next to her eyes. If, of course, Emmy could move her hands. With surprise, tensing muscle after muscle, the girl realized the terrifying reality: she was tightly bound. Why? She felt this question in every portion of the pain that the ropes caused her, cutting deep into her wrists, crossed behind her back. And in truth, why? Yesterday there was a party. Kim allowed herself to be kissed for the first time. Those $100 spent on drinks paid off for her in the best possible way. Emmy knew she had it in her. What happened next? The headache, of course, was not from the blow. The skin was intact. There didn't seem to be any bruises. A hangover. She must have passed out around midnight. She had difficulty remembering what happened before that. It seems she decided not to stay the night. Oh yes, a roommate in the dorm, an exchange student who arrived yesterday from another university, said that she knew where to get acid. Together, barely able to stand, the girls walked out of a house buzzing like a hornet's nest, filled with young, hot bodies celebrating the end of the school year. And then, Emmy didn't remember anything, just a sharp, deep pain in the neck. Someone gave her an injection. Like her hands, the girl's legs were tied and very numb. Trying to move only added to the pain that already seemed to fill most of her consciousness. The space in which she lay, huddled, was very small, even smaller than the coffin into which she once forced herself into. The idiot Martin then locked her there. And for a few seconds, Emmy inhaled the fresh smell of pine and honey. Here the smell was different. Gasoline. Tears of pain, powerlessness and humiliation came to her eyes. For the first time in all her 20 years, the young fan, the star of the school and a regular at every party in Pasadena for the last 5 years, felt so pathetic and helpless. Now, she wouldn't mind falling through the ground or dying. If she was forced into someone else's car, then it would be impossible to avoid questions from the police, and her father had already threatened to deprive her of subsidies if she got involved in something again. Everything around smelled of gasoline. There was no doubt this was someone's trunk, the only thing that gave at least some hope. For some reason, there were no other cars around, which means that ordinary passersby would probably hear it. "Hey, let me out. Help me," she wanted to shout, but the tie gag allowed her to squeeze out only an indistinct, muffled grunt, coughing and barely holding back vomiting. The girl listened, and within a second her heart was beating faster. The scream did not go unheard. "I finally woke up," said someone's cold voice, which made Emmy wary. None of her friends sounded like that. There was the sound of a car opening, and at that moment, the suspension jumped strongly, as if something incredibly heavy had been unloaded from the front seats. The trunk opened, and for a second, the girl decided that the joke was over. The bright midday sun was blinding, making it impossible to see the face of the joker. But this was definitely a joke. Who would seriously keep a person in the trunk during the day? Surely it was Carl. Who else? Last Halloween, Emmy and his friends threw a whole bag of live snakes into his room, which almost made him wet himself. It was too early. Of course, he took revenge, but still. The next second, a dark man standing over the girl, indistinguishable in the blinding rays of the sun, reached out his hand and, like a rag doll, threw her out of the car by her hair. The impact on the soft, cool ground, covered with a thick grass carpet, had a sobering effect. It was not a joke at all. "What the hell, man?" Emmy mumbled through the gag, trying to turn around like a snake, facing the offender, pressing her into the ground with his knee. The kidnapper untied the knots, leaving the ropes only on her legs. Finding herself in relative freedom, and feeling that the pressure of her knee on her back had weakened, with her freed hands the girl leaned on the ground and with a titanic effort threw her stiff body to the side, further away from the strange man, jumped up for a second on her legs, still tightly tied, and fell to the ground again, breathing heavily and looking in horror at the man frozen behind her in a half squat. "What are you allowing yourself to do, you freak?" the young man shouted, finally tearing out the gag. Anger almost got the better of his headache, and he furiously attacked the ropes holding his legs. "You know who I am? If my father only finds out." "Shut up," the man said in a quiet but icy voice, and Emmy involuntarily obeyed. "I give you 5 minutes." The man finally stood up, and his face, previously illuminated by the bright midday sun, was covered by the shadow of the towering trees around, thanks to which Emmy's eyes, weaned from the light, were finally able to get a good look at him. "And then you die." The girl's eyes widened in horror, not believing what she saw, ran over the kidnapper's face again and again. Unable to contain her scream of horror, Emmy screamed with all her might, "Help!" But no one heard her. It was a monster, as far as such a word can relate to a human being. The man towering like a mountain in front of Emmy was no longer young. The short blonde hair was already fairly gray, although its natural straw color was still visible. His face did not give the impression of something ugly, and yet it was repulsive, as if his features individually were not flawed, but together they formed completely incorrectly. Powerful eyebrows hung gloomily over dull greenish eyes. Without blinking, he looked straight into Emmy's eyes, and his middle-aged, wrinkled face barely showed a smile, which sent waves of cold fear down the girl's back over and over again. Emmy was strong, and was always happy to show off muscles that would make some guys jealous. Boxing, karate, wrestling. From early childhood she was not afraid of bandits, and was always sure that she could fight off any maniac who accidentally wandered into her native Pasadena. But this man made her seem like a child to herself. Powerful, sloping shoulders seemed to consist only of muscles. They clearly showed through the stretched Hawaiian shirt, absurdly covering his immense chest, hung with ridiculous amulets sold in esoteric shops for $2.40. The arms, crossed gloomily behind her back, seemed like they could strangle a bear. Amy had never seen someone so huge before. "Do you think this is just decoration?" the kidnapper asked mockingly. Emmy didn't think so. He didn't seem like a well-groomed bodybuilder. Every piece of his skin exposed to the eye was covered with scars. The origin of most of them was a mystery, but Emmy recognized several knife wounds without difficulty, long thin cuts, as if the victim had not stabbed, but had waved the knife away in panic from the advancing madman. These muscles were used more than once or twice to kill. Meanwhile, the kidnapper continued to stare at the girl, without moving, as if giving the girl time to realize what she had seen. Uncertainly, Emmy took a step to the side, and saw with horror how easily, as if dancing, the kidnapper made the same movement, blocking her path to the car. It was as if his huge weight didn't exist for him at all. There flashed through the girl's head, a huge, seasoned predator. Even the thought of a possible fight with this man caused panic. "You can take anything." The unexpected proposal made Emmy freeze at the moment when she was ready to rush into the nearest thicket. "I'll give you a chance. Everything will be fair. Whatever you find here or in the car is yours. I won't bother you. You can attack me with whatever is convenient for you. I, as you can see, am unarmed." Another vile half-smile appeared through the gloomy mask covered with small scars. "Or you can try to run away. If you live until evening, I'll leave. We won't see each other again in any case." "Why are you doing this?" the girl stammered, but there was no answer. "To rid you of illusions," he continued. "We are located in the center of Yosemite National Park, and the nearest city is at least 300 miles from here. Even if you can hide, you won't leave here alive. Only by car you have a chance, which means it would be better for you to start doing something about it. 5 minutes. From now on, time has passed." An unblinking green gaze closely followed her every move, but the man himself did not move. Only his nostrils widened slightly, as if in anticipation. He was waiting, and he knew that the wait would not last long. 4 minutes, he said quietly, and the cold that had previously been running down Amy's back, like a crazy whirlwind, engulfed her entirely. He didn't have any visible weapons. But does that change anything? The girl's darting gaze saw nothing more. "He will try to kill me. He can do it. With or without weapons. He can do it. Come on, you're smart. Everyone said that about you." The sinister smile on the kidnapper's face was no longer just frightening, but causing panic. The man moved slightly, stretching his neck, and no longer able to contain his horror. Emmy turned around and ran straight into the forest. A green canopy spreading around. Branches hit her in the face as she jumped straight through the bushes as fast as she could, surrounding the clearing, in which the car and the monster still stood motionless, escorting the girl with its unblinking eyes. 3 minutes, a contemptuous voice came after her. The sun disappeared behind a dense roof of leaves, leaving the world in darkness. The virgin forest, stretching for many hundreds of miles around, became denser and darker step by step. Without knowing the direction, it is impossible to get out of here. This is the end. Emmy had been running for about 10 minutes. Her heart almost jumped out of her chest, but she didn't stop. The adrenaline boiling in the blood demanded to run further, and the fear in the soul said that if you stop now, there will not be enough time to trap. A trap is a must if she wants to get out of the forest. But damn, how scary. As a child, Emmy's father taught her to catch rabbits. There is one principle, he said. The beast is predictable, and if you can calculate where he will go, you can catch him. The tiny fluffy creature was circling in horror around a peg nailed to the ground, with its paw stuck in the loop. Let him go, Emmy shouted upset. Let go now. Okay, Barry, don't worry, we'll untie you now. Bending down, the father, with a neat, measured movement, loosened the noose on the animal's paw, and the rabbit, with powerful jumps, disappeared from view. Blinking, Emmy realized that she was lying on the ground. A root, invisible under the grass, had knocked her to the ground. My heart was pounding wildly, as if it had decided to force its way out of my chest. But, thank God, I couldn't hear any noise behind me. Such a carcass must move noisily. Having risen with difficulty, having no idea which way to go, Emmy wandered off to her luck, gradually speeding up her pace. There were no paths in the forest. The endless flickering of shadows and glimpses of light was as confusing as a full shot of tequila. Yet the sense of time did not fail. The girl had been walking for several hours, but the landscape did not change. Deep gullies of streams, overgrown with thick greenery, were found here and there, fallen trees chaotically blocking the path, hills overgrown with willows and wild raspberries. Emmy's light sports jacket almost immediately turned into rags. She had never gone so deep into the forest before. An unexpected hiss interrupted her thoughts. From under her still lowered leg, a snake raised its head from the grass. Emmy froze, hanging there, with her leg raised half a step. Snakes never scared her, but this was not a harmless snake that could be put in a bag and thrown to a friend. It was a viper, menacingly testing the air with its tongue. The reptile disappeared into the grass, but whether it crawled away, the girl did not know. Her clothes were not suitable for the forest. Light sneakers on bare feet, and light blue jeans that perfectly outline her shape, but are completely defenseless against poisonous teeth. As slowly as possible, Amy moved her foot to the side and took a step back. And then, just as carefully, she walked around the danger, this time carefully inspecting the ground. Damn, she forgot that the old man is not her only problem. The forest is a merciless place. The girl did not know how to navigate by the sun. Yes, it wouldn't have helped. She had difficulty finding gaps in the dense green canopy. Sunset was inexorably approaching, and soon, despite the early hour, the forest became completely dark. When will her mother sound the alarm? Will she realize that her daughter never disappeared without warning her, either by call or by SMS? Having covered about another mile, Emmy came to a wide stream. Most likely, the kidnapper lied. They hardly drove for more than 12 hours, and Emmy came to her senses around noon. Moreover, he would hardly take the risk of driving around with his captive right in front of the police at a speed even close to the prohibited speed. No, they were definitely not driving on the highway and observed all existing speed limits, which means the road was not far. There is no point in indulging him and trying to take the key away. He wants to hunt, expects resistance. Well then, let him catch her first. Falling down to the stream, the girl cupped her palms, scooped up some water, and drank. Risky, but there was no time for a filter. The water turned out to be tasty, cool and without that mineral aftertaste that you get so used to when you drink bottled water for a long time. Having drunk more, Emmy felt dizzy and a pain in her stomach, as if her intestines were rejecting what was offered. But Emmy knew that this was a temporary phenomenon, and it was. Gradually her stomach calmed down, having pushed the rest of the water into herself to suppress the hunger that had begun to awaken. The girl decided to cross the stream. In my jacket pocket was half a muesli bar left over from breakfast the day before yesterday. Having bitten off half, Emmy returned the rest to her pocket, deciding to save it for last. Come to think of it, driving along the highway meant crossing several bridges over similar streams, but never in her entire life had Amy paid attention to their direction. Nevertheless, walking along the stream seemed the most logical. Sooner or later, the water will lead to people. In addition, next to the stream it will definitely last longer. Hunger, unlike thirst, can be tolerated for quite a long time. The sun was no longer visible. However, Emmy decided that the east was directly downstream. There was a long road ahead. A noise, as if someone was breaking through the bushes, somewhere far behind her, interrupted all the girl's thoughts. Bear? No. Somehow, he tracked her down. Hide? He's not a dog. The river won't bother him. Maybe he's following the trail? Crouching to the ground, Emmy felt something poke her under the ribs. Branch stuck in your jacket? No, it was a small folding knife. Strange. Emmy saw it for the first time. The kidnapper must have planted it. His scars came to mind. Fantasy completed the rest. He allows himself to be wounded. How many victims did he kill on his hunt? Having felt the rest of her pockets, Emmy realized that the kidnapper had not bothered to search her. Mobile, unfortunately discharged. Wallet with $20. Everything is in place. It's a pity that the pepper spray was left in the backpack left at the party. I'll give you a chance. Everything will be fair. That's where the knife comes from. This time, the sound of breaking branches seemed much closer to her. Ignoring the cold, Emmy climbed into the water and swam along the shore with an awkward breaststroke. No more noise was heard, but it was possible. It was the splash of water. The current made it possible to swim quite quickly, and soon Emmy began to notice how the forest around was thinning out. At 11 p.m., the highway was completely empty. A lone car, its high-beam headlights revealing the darkness of the night, slowly rolled east, towards Pasadena. Carl, a middle-aged bank employee, was in no hurry. He was driving from his parents unusually late for him. As a rule, he preferred to leave as soon as dinner ended, but after his sister moved in with her husband, communication with his father became much easier. It wasn't long before the city, and he was looking forward to his place to go out and smoke. Mary, his wife, couldn't stand it when he smoked in the car, and, obeying her, he almost quit. However, stopping on the bridge and smoking one cigarette, sometimes with a can of beer, had become almost a tradition for so many years, which he had no intention of changing. Having carefully parked by the side of the road and turning on the hazard lights, just in case, Carl went out onto the bridge. A small river without a name sparkled merrily in the dim moonlight. Taking a cigarette out of his secret pocket, Carl realized, not without irritation, that he had not taken the lighter, which meant he would have to return to the car for a lighter. An unexpected splash stopped him halfway. Fish? Or maybe a moose? The splash was repeated, and the man became worried. All that was missing was to stumble upon a lynx or something like that. Having quickened his pace almost to a run, he hurried to quickly cover the rest of the path, when suddenly, a barely audible voice came to him from under the bridge. Help! The voice was female. Lord God! Just in case, taking a flashlight from the glove compartment with him, Carl went down under the bridge. A girl was lying on the shore, disheveled red hair matted with dirt. Wet, torn clothes clung to the slender figure. She was breathing. Oh my God, miss, are you okay? Raising her head with difficulty, the girl squinted due to the bright light of the lantern. They're chasing me, she whispered. At that moment, Carl realized that horror was frozen on her face, and a knife was frantically clutched in her hand. Well, what are you talking about? He said soothingly, taking off his jacket to cover the unfortunate woman. Let me help you. With some difficulty, Carl helped the girl get up and led her to the car. We need to call the police, the girl whispered, almost losing consciousness, and leaning more and more on the banker's shoulder. He'll get us. You're trembling all over. Sit down. I'll call you. No, take me away from here. With unexpected force, the girl almost shouted. Call later. He will be here. Lord God, Carl stammered, getting behind the wheel. The car started moving, running over the dropped cigarette. Faster, Emmy begged. Well, being able to refuse, Carl was driving faster and faster, when suddenly, in the headlights, a huge figure appeared, reflexively pressing the brakes and turning the steering wheel. Carl felt the blow with his whole body. Everything around froze. In an eerie silence, the engine stalled, but one of the headlights that remained intact illuminated a huge body lying supine on the road. Dead? Emmy asked, barely holding back hysteria. Carl didn't know what to answer her, convulsively squeezing the steering wheel with icy fingers. He kept looking at the body like a punctured balloon. It sank and deflated, and, at some moment, it seemed to Carl that something dark had escaped from him and disappeared into the shadows around. A hiss sounded in Emmy's ears, as if from an untuned radio. Not understanding what was happening, she looked at her hands. They seemed numb. No, her whole body went numb. She wanted to move her fingers to get rid of the unpleasant feeling, but her hands did not obey. The eyelids and even the breathing did not obey. A second later, she realized that she was moving, but she was not moving herself. Her hand reached for the knife lying on the seat next to her. The man in the front seat still had not come to his senses and did not hear the lock clicking, blocking the blade. Emmy wanted to scream, but couldn't. Her whitened, expressionless face was reflected in the rearview mirror. The knife entered the banker's body gently, easily cutting his throat all the way to the spine. A fountain of blood hit the windshield, and Carl, who had no time to understand anything, fell onto the steering wheel in an absurd pose. Grinning, Emmy looked in the mirror and winked at herself. With the knife, still covered in blood, she carefully cut the skin on her forearm. It should make a nice scar. Who would have thought on the very first night? The crumpled car disappeared around a bend, leaving 2 bodies on the ground. The corpse of the recent kidnapper lay on the side of the road, thrown away by a terrible blow. He quickly smoldered, crumbling and gradually turning into a skeleton, but for some time a smile could be seen on his quickly blackening lips. He still made it. This means the hunt will continue.